Travel around the world, and every now and then I come to a place where I'll see one of these jets, a jet in the background. And it's one thing to see, come to a place and see a jet like this. It's another thing to come to a place like this and see a jet like this and be with somebody who used to sit up there in that cockpit. This is Captain Joe Wessel, right?
Correct.
And where are we right now, Captain?
We are about a quarter mile from the flight line at George Air Force Base in Victorville, California.
Quarter mile from the flight. Now you're from. I met you yesterday. I met Captain Wessel yesterday, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to visit with Joe and meet his family and everything. And Joe, you are what's called a homeboy. You grew up you grew up a stone's throw from. You grew up a stone's throw from where I grew up back in the shores of Lake Erie, right?
Cleveland, Ohio.
So you in 72, is that when you got into the military?
72, I got accepted for pilot training. I went into the OTS January 1st of 73.
And did you grow up wanting to be a
No.
pilot? Did you used to look at planes in
No.
the sky and say, I want to be a
I
pilot?
went in to fly and see the world. And got accepted.
That's what you
It
wanted.
took me a while to get accepted for pilot training.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get accepted. I graduated from college in the early 71. I didn't get accepted until the end of 72.
And you, so that was the Vietnam War was going on during that time.
Vietnam War was still going on. Didn't end until April of 75.
So you were, so if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about
ahead.
your experience over in Vietnam?
Yeah.
What were you flying in Vietnam? What was the first plane that you ever
First
flew?
airplane I trained in was a T-29 out of Mather Air Force Base in early 73 after I was commissioned as second
A
lieutenant.
T-29.
T-29.
T-29. Okay. And then when you were over in Viet, you were flying combat in Vietnam, were you not?
Let me refresh your viewers. I got to Thailand. I flew out of Karat Air Base in central Thailand, just north of Bangkok. I got there probably in September of 74.
Uh-huh.
The war was in a hiatus then because it was the truce negotiations were going on, and it took 4 or 5 months till actually something happened. Early 75, if you don't remember, we had Phnom Penh attacked. We had the fall of Phnom Penh, and then we had the Mayaguez.
Okay.
And then we had Vietnam fall in April of 75. Saigon fell. And at that time,
close.
I was flying
Closer.
a C-130 gunship. I was the
Perfect.
EW on a C-130 gunship. I sat back in the booth. If you want to look at a gunship, I've got probably 200 hours in that airplane. And we left there in May of 75, closed the air base at Karat, flew back into San Francisco, and I got assigned to an F4.
Now let's put this in context. How old are you at this time?
I'm 26 years old.
You're 26 years
Then.
old. Were you just full of adrenaline and you were just like let's go get them, or was it?
No.
Were you afraid?
No.
You, no.
Actually, flying is 90% routine,
Yeah.
95% routine, even in a fighter. And once you get good at it, it's 95% routine and then 5% uncomfortable, and maybe 2% sheer terror on occasion.
And when you before you went over there, you were telling me you had to go through POW training
Okay.
or something like.
Actually, in order to go to Vietnam, first of all, you get your wings. I got my wings in, let me think, 73. I went to navigator school, which was 7 months long, 8 months long. That was finished in December. Then I did not get an airplane out of there because I finished too high in the class. I got what they call EW school. EW school was electronic warfare. That was the new in thing in the military because of all the surface-to-air missiles and the defensive systems that were originating in airplanes. So I took an assignment after EW school. That was 6 months long. I took an assignment to Vietnam in an AC-130 gunship. Most of the guys that came out of EW school went to B-52s. The last airplane I wanted to fly was a B-52. So after that, we had to go to many survival schools. We had water survival in Florida, where we actually parachuted into the ocean and had to survive in a raft and get picked up by helicopters. After that, we had to go to Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State, for 2 weeks. The first week was survival training and going out into the countryside and surviving. The second week, if you were going to Vietnam, it was POW training.
I'll be darned.
And then they actually, you were only in there a week. But I will tell you, when I got out, I could not walk because if you were tall, two of the things I still remember they did, they put us in little boxes where they put us in for a little box like a enlarged shoebox.
Right.
And you spent hours in there.
My goodness.
And another thing, which was the worst thing, they never turned off the lights at night, to my recollection. And then they would strip you naked and hose you down. And those were the 2 or 3 of the worst things. But when this was only for 1 week.
Yeah.
And after when I got out 1 week, I actually could not walk because of the some of the things that they did.
When you came back, when the war was over and you came back, you weren't treated that well. Soldiers coming back from Vietnam were not treated that well.
There was never, people think the war was totally unpopular. If you don't remember, Kent State occurred in 69.
74.
No, 69 to
okay.
70.
All right.
Because I was a junior or senior in college at that time, and I got time off. 69 or 70. I'm thinking it was 69. My brother was actually at Kent State. Okay, he was there afterwards. But there was a lot of unrest, especially among the college students at that time. They didn't want to serve. And the war was not going well.
Wow.
It was not going well. And when I got back into San Francisco Airport, it wasn't any type of, to my recollection, I was in uniform. It wasn't a pleasant experience.
You know, as I stand here talking to you, I can't help but to think that I'm standing next to a real American hero. You know?
No.
I mean, I only met you yesterday, and I give you a hard time. You know, but with all the sincerity in my heart, you know, I mean, I have so much gratitude for gentlemen like yourself that served our country in the capacity that you did. You know, you're a hero, Mr. Wessel.
To be honest, I will tell you who are heroes. I flew this airplane right behind us. I have 2,000 hours in that back seat. I got here in 85. I lost a guy that I flew with for 2 years in North Carolina. Okay, he hit the ground. I wasn't with him at the time. Okay, the backseater lived. He got killed, and I lost at least 3 or 4 friends that I flew with. And what people don't realize, combat was not the most dangerous. Actual training was much more dangerous in the F4 than actual combat, because we actually flew sometimes 3 times a day and pulling AGs.
Let's take a walk around this. Let's take a walk around the plane. I'll grab the camera. Okay. Let's take a walk. We'll take a walk around this thing.
Okay.
I want to just, you know, as we walk, let's just do a walk and talk, and I'll give a thank you to the cameraman for doing that with us. So this is what's called, this is an F4C.
This is an early model of the airplane. This originated, F4 came out in the late 50s. At that time, this was the fastest airplane on the planet. Okay, you think about this airplane, it goes back 60 years.
60 years.
This is what we call a hard wing. It landed at a higher speed. It doesn't have what the F4E had. It had a different wing configuration. All right, these are drop tanks. If we were going into combat, we'd punch these off.
Okay? What do you mean you'd punch them off?
Jettison.
What was this fuel?
This is fuel.
This was fuel.
This is
okay.
A substantial amount of fuel.
Okay.
So fuel was not enough if we were going into combat. If you're actually going to fly any type of combat mission, you always tank beforehand.
Okay.
Tank means you took on 5,000-6,000 pounds of gas. Okay, that probably would fill in these 2 external tanks. Now, why? If we actually were flying this airplane and we wanted to go supersonic, we had light burners, and we might be going 540 knots on the deck. We're burning a whole lot of fuel. The biggest danger in flying the airplane was actually, one of the biggest dangers was running out of fuel.
No kidding.
There was not a gas gauge in the back seat. The only gas gauge in this airplane was the front seat. And if the front seater is flying in combat, he's not necessarily paying attention. So a lot of times we got into severe problems because we were low on fuel. To my recollection, a large number of pilots that ejected in Vietnam, it was because of fuel. Okay?
Now, when you say you sat in the back seat, and I think you referenced Goose from Top Gun, right? So the pilot, are you a pilot or a co-pilot sitting in the back?
Actually, for your what occurred, the Air Force initially put 2 pilots in this airplane. Probably to the late 60s, they couldn't train pilots fast enough. So they decided, I didn't start flying this airplane till 75. Vietnam was over, but in the latter years of Vietnam, 69 to 72, they were short of pilots. So they started putting what we call navigators, and our title was either a weapons systems officer, or if you went to the specialized school like myself, I was an electronic warfare officer. And why was that? Early in Vietnam, we didn't have radar homing and warning. So we didn't get a launch indication to indicate a missile was coming out. They had very, very primitive launch systems. So the backseater's main job was to check 6 when you went into combat and be monitoring all the defensive gear.
Now check 6 is behind you.
Meaning behind you. We usually would fly in different formations, predominantly 4 airplanes in Vietnam, okay? And we did that probably till the early 80s. The whole reason for that was defensive in nature. And predominantly moving 4 airplanes when you're traveling 540 knots and keeping them together at low altitude sometimes was extremely difficult. Okay, so you got separated. Okay, early on in Vietnam, again, when you flew fighters, the most inexperienced guy was number 4. A lot of times he got shot down because he was the last guy over the target.
So you had yourself and another pilot up here in the cockpit, and let's walk underneath this. Let's walk underneath this fighter here. Okay, so you've got here is a missile, right?
These are both. Well, again, they're not marked, and I am pretty sure these are AIM-7s. These are the radar guided. They don't say anything on them. They look like AIM-7s to my best recollection. This is a radar-guided missile.
A radar-guided missile.
I would launch this, or the pilot would launch this, but this would be a long range. This is not a heat seeker.
Okay.
This is an AIM-7. Okay.
And how many of these would you carry? Would there be 2 of these?
My recollection, this is an air-to-air load. Okay. If you put bombs on this and you put missiles on this, you're going to be restricted by predominantly weight. You can't maneuver the airplane as well. Normally, I never flew this airplane in combat, so I can't tell you. I trained on this airplane only. But normally, if you were going into combat, you might have a full load of bombs, and that might be, I'm going to guess, 24 to 32 500-pound bombs at max, okay? With the drop tanks. And the drop tanks, you would always drop those, or possibly drop the bombs if you got attacked prior to ingressing to the target. So when you're ingressing, your biggest concern is if you get attacked by MiGs, you're heavy overweight. You can't maneuver this airplane.
Were you in air-to-air combat with other?
The only time I flew air-to-air combat was in training. I never flew real combat in Vietnam in a fighter. Okay. So yeah. So I don't know exactly. And then our primary mission, this is the airplane I flew in Madrid, Spain for 2 years, the F-4C. Our primary mission was low altitude ingress with predominantly bombs. Okay, we didn't fly that much air to air in Spain.
Did it challenge you? I mean, as a human being, did it challenge you knowing, when you were pushing that button and you were dropping those bombs? Those bombs were doing some pretty bad stuff when they hit the ground.
Again, you got to remember, I never dropped a live bomb I actually dropped live bombs maybe twice in my career on a bomb range.
Okay.
I never dropped live bombs on people.
You did not?
No, or a target. Because the only time I flew combat was Vietnam in a different airplane.
Now let's talk about something else that you had discussed with me, and something about you were in Italy and Aviano Air Base, and also in Turkey. Right. And you were responsible for a nuclear.
The reason why this airplane was designed. First of all, I only sat nuclear alert in Aviano.
Nuclear alert is what you call it. Okay.
I think other crews did it in Turkey, but I'm not totally sure on that. So,
okay.
Okay. In the late 70s, I did it in 77, 78. We rotated from Spain into Aviano Air Base, and we had a bomb on the center of the airplane, a nuclear bomb. Okay, we sat alert, and basically what it was we would be within a 10-minute. We're on 24-hour alert, and we would be within 5 to 10 minutes of the airplane. We had to get in the airplane and copy a message, and validate the message to decide whether or not we were going to launch or not. Okay, so I did that for 2 weeks, and what I remember is the bomb was pretty and it was surreal. I mean,
it was pretty and it was surreal.
Well, again, it's surreal because you're there and you're saying you got guards all around you with machine guns. You're in an enclosed area, okay, with one airplane, okay, and you're not going to move the airplane. That's why, and also that's why they had this airplane and the F-111 sitting alert. They wanted two-man control. So both the pilot, and I would have to copy the message, and we'd have to authenticate it, and we'd have to decide, both of us, is this a real message or a practice message? And we probably did it 2, 3, 4 times during the 2 weeks I sat alert, and it was always obviously practice.
And that bomb was bigger than the bomb in Hiroshima.
The bomb was, to my recollection, it was probably 50 kiloton. Okay, and the thing about the bombs, they were very, very small, miniaturized. Okay?
Yeah.
Compared to what you remember.
Right.
The bombs dropped in Hiroshima.
Right.
Okay.
Captain, I'm going to ask you a question, if I may. Okay. How old are you?
I am 70.
70. As you look back over the course of your lifetime, and this is a rather personal question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, okay? But I'm going to ask it anyway. What's been the greatest accomplishment in your life? As you look back over the course of your lifetime.
Course of my life?
Yeah, what's been your greatest accomplishment in life?
Having my 2 kids grown up now and both doing well.
That's great.
Hey, I got passed over in the military because I was Top Gun, which meant I was the best bomber on a wing for a year. But I didn't always play by the rules.
No?
I didn't always agree with everything that was done. Okay?
All right.
I saw too many things that I disagreed with. I was very lucky to retire as a captain.
Yeah. All right, Captain. Well, listen, thank you. Okay. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a pleasure being your guest, and I certainly thank you so much for taking the time to share some memories with us. All right.